And we are back. This is episode number 75 of Kalibrated with Scott. I'm Scott, of course. I've been working on something very diligently for the past 2 weeks, so I haven't actually made a video. I was hoping to incorporate what I've been working on in this video, and that's what I'm going to do today. So I'm going to actually take us over a full frontline overview of what's happening in Ukraine right now, and I'm going to bring us over to my map that I have made. This map, it shows the entirety of the front line of the SMO in Ukraine. All of these little dots you see right here, all of these points are geolocations that we use to update the map. The map does not change unless the progress is confirmed through geolocation or it's an absolute certainty. If we zoom into the hottest point of the SMO right now, which is the battle for Avdiivka, we can see that we have numerous geolocations to the north around Stepove. We have numerous geolocations down to the south. And just for color's sake, when you are looking at this map, red is confirmed controlled areas by Russia. The normal satellite mapping is what Ukraine controls of Ukraine. This purple area is unconfirmed Russian advances. So Russian advances that are 80% confidence, but do not have exact geolocations to reference. And when you come up here, you can see that we have some more purple around Bakhmut. And then this green area is how we identify confirmed Russian advances in a specific area. So that's how the map is working right now. This map will be updated frequently, and it will soon be public. So it will be an available resource for anybody to use at any time. I wanted to start this overview. Actually, we could start down with Krinky, just because this is an area that is often talked about by the pro-Ukrainian information space. It's this little bridgehead right here. There are a continuous stream of AFU that flood into this area, and they just try to hold basically this little town right here. This town is very tiny. It's like 2 blocks deep, and it's very long. It's right up against these little rivers that run through this delta of the Dnipro River. So Ukraine controls most of the islands and marshes in here. The Russians don't spend a lot of time in this area, specifically because the Ukrainians have higher ground on the opposite bank of the Dnipro River, and the artillery advantage the artillery spotting advantage is significant. So the Russians stay further back. They stay on the dry, hard ground as well. And the Ukrainians have made this little bridgehead. And if we come in and look in here, I'm going to dispel some myths. This is not beneficial for the AFU. The AFU is dealing with all sorts of things over here. The whole city is basically destroyed. We have grenade drop videos. We have evac groups getting hit, fab strikes daily, FPV strikes all the time. So this is basically just a little killing zone. I feel horrible for any of the men coming across this and being stuck over here. They do not have any hospitals, so medical evacuation will probably take an hour or two to get across this river through this delta marsh and then back over to this little town right here, where they probably have some sort of field hospital. But since this is an artillery range and deep strike range, I imagine the field hospital is either down over here or potentially up over here somewhere. So this is a forward operating position for the Ukrainians on this bridgehead, but it is not safe by any means. And if we click on some of these geolocations, you can see that an Mi-8 helicopter of the AFU is downed here. There's Lancet hits on communications, and there's Lancet hits on artillery. And that goes for basically this entire bank. The Ukrainians have placed a lot of artillery on this bank, and it is being removed regularly by Russian counter-battery warfare. That's Lancets, fab strikes, and counter-battery artillery. So We also have a AFU Su-25 that was destroyed in Kryvyi Rog. That's very important because the distance from Kryvyi Rog to the nearest Russian position is 65 kilometers, which overtly confirms our ideas that the Russians have developed a longer range Lancet. The Lancet in question offers a much greater range and ability to deep strike, and that removes a lot of Ukraine's airfields and air defense positions because they're just not safe anymore. If we move over here to Robitny, this is where the Ukrainian counteroffensive went the most in depth. I don't really know what's going on right here. I think the map got a little messed up. This isn't supposed to look like this, but that's not very important because nothing's even happening up here. This is the important part right here, right? And you can see that Verbove, we have artillery strikes by the Russians. We have AFU infantry hit. So there's still ongoing fighting in this area. There's also still fighting going on just west of Robitny. The fighting here is very confusing to me. I made sense in the June, July when they were trying to punch through, but now it just feels like they're wasting a brigade or two down here of armor and manpower pushing for no possible reason. There's absolutely no way they reach Tokmak. They're basically just trying to hold on to these gains and not lose everything that they had achieved through the counteroffensive. And it's just like a sunk cost fallacy. They just want to hold this at any cost to maintain the PR image that is going on right now. So if we move over here to Staromayorsk and Orozhain, the Russians have been pushing in all over this area, really trying to force the issue. We have artillery strikes. We have AFU infantry hits, so there's still active hostilities in this area, and the Russians have the initiative here. We will move over to Ugledar, where we have unconfirmed reports of Russian advances in this area towards the mine, which is the actual logistics hub of Ugledar. But this area is very hard to contest. Ugledar is just a fortress on a high ground that is surrounded by flat nothing. So expect this to fall when further progress is made in Marinka, which now has been captured completely. This is not confirmed, but this is almost guaranteed. We do have confirmation of the Russian flag being placed on this corner of Marinka, which gives us a good idea that this whole area is probably secure. We also have another flag right here, so even more confirmation. The part that we don't know about right now is this northern part of Marinka, but it's sounding like it has been captured. So the fighting has been going on here since 2014. I'm pretty sure everybody involved with this fighting is glad that it's over on both sides. And now the Russians will be looking to expand this zone of control by taking this small little settlement right here, and then eventually moving down and cutting off the supply to Vuhledar. It's very important to notice the supply routes into Vuhledar. You have one that comes down through here and goes into Pavlivka. That one is cut off by the Russians. And you have this one that comes down. So this is the only remaining supply route into Vuhledar. There are probably some possibilities of moving through these dirt roads, but remember, seasonally, these roads end up shutting down because of the rain and mud. And even when it starts to get very snowy, it's hard to travel across these roads without tracked vehicles. So the Russians could very well make a play for Vuhledar this winter. It just depends on how the reserves of the AFU are managed. And now I'm going to take us up to Avdiivka, which is our focal point of today's podcast. I going to come down here and just show you guys that there was RU infantry hit in this section, which gave us confirmation that there had been some progress in Prvomajski. So that is important to note because the Ukrainians were trying to counterattack here and expose this flank of the salient, which is the southern flank of the Avdiivka cauldron. Over here, we have another artillery strike. These geolocations that are in the rear here, artillery shelling and AFU vehicle struck, these are the most important, I believe, because these show that logistics running in and out of Avdiivka are being targeted very heavily. Once Severne falls, which you see a lot of Russian progress in this direction, that will probably be curtains for Avdiivka. Severne is on a slight high ground. There's a slight hill that leads into a valley right here. And if you look very closely, you can see this 0542 road that goes in is the last main supply route that is safe for the Ukrainians. I say safe. It's still under artillery control by the Russians. Russians can fly FPVs, Lancets, anything into this direction. So there is a constant targeting of vehicles on this road, but for the majority of the time, you can transport supplies safely. We also have progress out of Spartak, which is this area right here. Significant again, just because it inches closer and closer to Avdiivka, and particularly the 9th district, which is a major strong point in Avdiivka. If we come down here, we can see that Russians have made progress towards, I'm going to mess this up, but Tarska Ota is what I'm going to go ahead and call it. It's a restaurant, but what's important is the defensive positions that the Ukrainians have around here. It hasn't been a restaurant since 2014. Most of Avdiivka has been completely evacuated since the fighting began here. It's been a frontline city for a long time, so this is just sort of a major defensive position now. And once this falls, this whole area will likely fall. We do have Russian FPV strikes in the town of Skatovota. It is a small dacha area. It's not very important, but it's one of the last defensive areas for the AFU with structure. We also have the mine right here where the Russians have captured the entirety of this industrial area, which was the front line since 2014. This is where a number of major fortifications, where this progress right here is disastrous for the AFU. As soon as the Russians push out of this dacha area, secure this mine, they will be at the doorstep of Avdiivka. And if you look very closely, this is all just housing. There's no major structures here. There are probably not very great fortifications in this area just because of the structuring. So, I've always split Avdiivka up into 3 security zones. We have this security zone right here, which is the most heavily fortified. This is the front line. It has been built up with concrete fortifications, trench lines, everything. They have tunnels, all sorts of things in this area. This area is the most difficult to push through because of its direct connection to Donetsk, its direct physical connection to Donetsk. So the Ukrainians have built up this area very, very deeply. You also have the 9th district, which is a commie block. This is the same thing we saw in Bakhmut with the citadel, quote unquote. This one's a little bit smaller, but these are 5-6 story apartment buildings up against fields. So the Russians have to cross open fields with Ukrainian observation in high points. It's artificial high ground right here. If we move up here, you can see that there is a great branching out from this waste heap. We see progress down here, an AFU FPV strike on a Russian position, another FPV strike on Russian positions. Most of these Russian advances are labeled by RU infantry actually being hit, Russian infantry being hit or being targeted. We also have FAB strikes on the Avdiivka coke plant, which is the third and final security zone. It's a large industrial area, sort of like Azovstal, but smaller, and it offers a great defensive position for the Ukrainians. The Russians have been constantly trying to push in through here, and it just hasn't been working out. I don't know if they're actually frontally assaulting the coke plant in the way that the Ukrainians describe, or if they are more focused on the more important area, which would be Stepove and Berdichi, and then to the north to Nova Kalinova, and over here to Orchitny. If we move in and look at Stepove, we can see that there is quite a bit of progress in this area. We have a AFU Bradley position on December the 4th, so a couple days ago. We have an AFU vehicle struck over on the back end. We have our Russian positions being hit. So we have pretty good idea that the zone of control on this street looks like this. However, I believe that the Russians actually control the entirety of this tree line all the way up to here, because my interpretation is that this would be impossible to hold without holding this tree line. And then this whole area is probably also under Russian control, including this tree line, and everything else. This map is artificial and not always logical, because it goes directly off of geolocations. So if you see weird little areas, you're like, how is the AFU keeping this area supplied? They're likely not. The Russians likely control it, or it's a gray zone where nobody really goes. And then to the north, there is progress in this area that is not mapped because we don't have the proper geolocations for it. But the Russians are constantly attacking in this direction. Once they make it into this town, the situation becomes very, very difficult for the Ukrainians. This little town right here, Orchitny, is a major supply hub. It is on the railroad. It keeps a lot of this area supplied, and once it's gone, it's going to be much, much more difficult to get supplies into Orlivka and then down into Avdiivka. There are very limited roads through this place to Avdiivka, and if this road is cut right here, the Ukrainians will have to begin going all the way around out here, down through there, and down in. So that this would, I would say, is probably a bigger goal than Avdiivka itself. Avdiivka is the shiny prize, but if you can secure this whole area becomes much more untenable. And the progress around Avdiivka and the reserves that the AFU are putting in are tremendous. So, I don't know how fast Avdiivka is going to fall. The Russians are pushing very hard, but the Ukrainians are also defending with all their might, like they did in Bakhmut. And that has really exposed other areas of the front for the Russians. We have a Ukrainian counterattack that took this waste heap around Orlivka, but that has since been returned. A pointless counterattack, in my opinion. And now we come to the Bakhmut salient. This is where the Ukrainians also went on the offensive for their counteroffensive in conjunction with their offensive in Zaporozhye. We have geolocations of AFU infantry being struck. The Russians have pushed up onto this high ground right here, according to Syriac maps. Like I said earlier, we do not have geolocation, so it's not going to be added to the map yet until it's an absolute certainty. But the Russians are on this high ground looking down on Kleshchivka now, and they are likely in the fortification system that is developed above Kleshchivka. So that fortification is basically the key to this whole salient. Once that fortification is captured, like Wagner captured it before, Kleshchivka will fall and Drivka will come back under full Russian control, and this entire canal right here will be the front line. Once that is done, Ivanivsky will be a prize. I don't think that the Ukrainians will be able to keep it supplied. If this road is under fire control, there will probably be a forced evacuation out of this town. And my belief is that this is going to happen sooner rather than later. The Russians have deployed even more reserves to the Bakhmut salient to push in, and they are going to do their damnedest to push the line all the way out to this this Donetsk canal right here that goes all the way up to Slavyansk. So the goal right now for the Russians on the northern flank is to basically reestablish the positions that Wagner was holding, I think, January, February of this year. Right here, there is a massive trench network where we have seen AFU infantry being hit. And all of this progress being made by the Russians. This area is also likely under Russian control now. Kramove, which was a thorn in the side for Wagner, they could never get into this town, is now under RU control. And we have even more confirmed advances near Horlivka and Bogdanivka. So once the Russians are in Bogdanivka and they get fire control over the 0506, this whole area right here is just going to collapse. And once that collapses, any ideas of the Ukrainians reaching Bakhmut basically evaporates. Other areas of the front that have seen progress, there have been some progresses made in the Shabyansky forestry, obviously ongoing fighting around Bilohorivka. The AFU ground commander in this area is extremely well experienced and determined. He has put up an amazing fight in this area and gets no recognition for it. He has held Bilohorivka for a very long time and deserves a medal for that. Will he ever get it? I do not know, but deserves it. And then if we come over here to the Luhansk Kharkiv front, this map is not updated the way that I see it. I think that the Russians have a huge zone of control all the way out here that overtakes this forestry. But since we do not have geolocations, we are not going to add it. The Russians have also pushed out through here a good amount. So there's probably 30 to 40 square kilometers right here that are not mapped that should be eventually. We have geolocation of FPV strikes. So the Russians are closer to this location, which means that they're in this area somewhere. But we just do not have proper identification. And then as we move up, there is Russian advances, minor Russian advances along this whole line. Pressure is being increased significantly. And then up into the Kharkov region, we have advances in this direction down towards Kupiansk, and then into Sinkivka. The Russians are now saying that they control the northern half of Sinkivka. There is a river that divides this town, and I can't exactly see it on this map, but the Russians say that they control the northern end. I think it feeds out of this lake, and the Ukrainians control the southern end on the other side of the river. So there is a water boundary in this town that the Russians are holding. Yeah, this is it right here. I don't know if the river actually has water in it, or if it's even a river, if it's just a stream, or I have no idea. But the Russians say they control the northern half. The Ukrainians say they control the southern half. So that's the overview of the map. I am going to put this away, but this will be a map that will be available for public consumption very soon. So be on the lookout for that if you're interested in using that map. I have a couple things that I wanted to talk about outside of my mapping. We have seen a complete collapse in the Ukrainian information space morale. I'm talking about the people closely associated with the Ukrainian government, lobbyists, um, people who have connections in the Ukrainian military, Ukrainian politicians, and so on. Not so much the Western backers of Ukraine, like I don't know. There's a good number of them, but the people who actually are affiliated with Ukraine have taken a massive, massive morale hit. I don't know what exactly is being told to them behind the scenes. I don't know if reality is just starting to hit, the reality that I've been talking about on these podcasts for about a year. But something is going on and it is negatively affecting morale. And we have a lot of bad news. Hit after hit after hit keeps happening to Ukraine. And I'm trying to make sense of it right now. I don't want to get lured into a trap where, Ukraine is intentionally putting out this message that the U.S. is like sort of betraying them. We have Zelensky canceling his talks in front of the U.S. Congress and the House of Representatives, which is a pretty big deal because Zelensky never misses an opportunity to get on stage and make money for Ukraine. The talk is that the funding is not going to pass for Ukraine. We're coming into an election season in the U.S., and that is a very big deal for uh, politicians. Ukraine's approval rating right now, or the approval rating to send aid to Ukraine, is now at 42%. That is not particularly good. So the voting base of these politicians pretty much doesn't want to send money to Ukraine anymore. And if the politicians decide to send money to Ukraine, that's going to be used against them in this upcoming election season, especially the Biden administration. They're having a lot of issues. They want the money to get passed, but they need to have other things included. And what the Republicans are really asking for is border security, like guarantees, basically, in this upcoming bill, funding for border security. And that's really just playing to their base. And they will use the border crisis as an excuse to or they'll use Ukraine's aid as an excuse to gain funding for this border crisis. I mean, I do believe that there's an actual border crisis. I believe that it is artificially created, though, by the Biden administration. So, it's a crisis, but it's a controlled crisis. The Republicans, they are all a part of the military industrial complex. So they're all going to make money off of this if this passes. I've also seen the Democrats basically sending out lists of states that will receive extra funding because of this Ukraine bill. We have a military industrial complex here. We have production in almost all 50 states for that military industrial complex. And that is a way to leverage votes to actually get a bill for Ukraine aid to pass. Do I think Ukraine aid will pass? Yes, absolutely. I can't see Washington walking away from this investment right now. A critical loss here would be extremely negative. I believe that they want Ukraine to push for negotiations, but I don't think any Ukrainian president can do that after what he has done to his people and the propaganda that has been pushed for over a year, which is 1991 borders, Russians out of Ukraine, Crimea returns, all of that, EU, NATO membership. It's just none of that is going to happen now, and any Ukrainian president is going to have to, survive that letdown, and that's just it's political suicide. It's probably literal suicide for any Ukrainian president that does it. So I expect the aid to pass, but I do not expect any negotiations. There's been a lot of rumors that there are secret negotiations going on. I've heard that 4 times this year. I don't believe it at all. I think that the lines of communication between Ukraine and Russia have completely broken down. There is no good faith anymore. There can't be. I mean, I'll add a little graphic right here that I posted on Twitter the other day, where it shows the three leaders of the countries of France, Ukraine, and Germany in 2014 or 2015, talking about the Minsk agreements and how the Minsk agreements they've all admitted it. So 3 of the 4 participants in the Minsk agreements have all admitted that they were just a stall tactic to buy time for Ukraine for this eventual war. Which leads me to believe that Putin was the only genuine person at this summit that agreed to all of this. On top of that, Ukraine is now, there's rumors all over the front that Ukraine is running out of artillery shells. This is significant. Around Bakhmut in particular, the Russians are saying that it's rather quiet. There's almost no guns firing on them. And that's a very big deal. And a lot of that, I do believe, comes from the West's ability to actually deliver these weapons and produce these weapons. But also, there's a significant blockade happening on the Polish-Ukrainian border and the Slovakian-Ukrainian border, I believe. There's Slovakian protesters. I'm pretty sure they're government supported because the government would probably remove them if they actually wanted that aid to reach Ukraine. And these guys are basically blocking all traffic, logistics traffic into Ukraine. And so all of that logistics has to now run through Romania, through Odessa. And that is really tunneling their logistics lines and extending it by about 2 weeks. So that's a huge impact on Ukraine's ability to fight this war and keep supplies moving in. With all of this supply moving through Odessa, the Ukrainians received a new Patriot air defense system, which they have probably most likely placed in Odessa. And we saw yesterday a Russian Su-70 or Su-24 bomber was shot down over Zemini Island, which is Snake Island, where the Ukrainians often do PR runs out there. They have a little outpost, and the Russians bomb it every time the Ukrainians go out there. So this time, the Su-24 went out with a bomber in coverage, and it was likely downed by a Patriot air defense system. So the Russians now have to be on the lookout for that. It gives a little bit of a buffer zone for Ukraine down in the south. However, there's probably not a lot of missiles for that Patriot system, so they will just end up exhausting them and then move on from there. Other than that, I wanted to go over some of my Patreon questions that I got because I was supposed to do it in my last video and I just didn't end up having time. So I'm going to go into my Patreon questions really fast and answer them. All right. So this question comes from Vault Dweller. As Zelensky becomes less able to misuse other countries' taxpayer money, what do you think awaits him? Will he face a helicopter incident, or will he step down gracefully and transfer power to someone else who could take his place right now? And how might this attempt regain people's interest? I do not envy the position Zelensky is in. He is a underqualified individual who has been propped up into this position and does not understand the grander politics and diplomatic nuances that most leaders do. Zelensky will likely just end up in exile, a president in exile. If there is a coup, he could, get into a helicopter incident. I don't know. Helicopter incident meaning any sort of assassination, basically. I think an ousting is most likely what's going to occur. We already see a huge rift between Zaluzhny and Zelensky. There has been nonstop reports of infighting to the point where I don't think it can be a psyop. Literally everybody is talking about it. It's quite often brought up, and it's been brought up for months and months. And now is not the time to really be showing this division between the political and military leadership. We also have rumors that Zelensky has taken over a lot of the military decision making, which is always a great thing when politicians take over the military decision making. That is 1945 bunker-esque sort of logical thinking there. But you have to do what you have to do when you're Zelensky to stay in power and keep the war going. If you started fighting the war the way that Zelensky wants to fight it, Western aid stops coming in. So, he has to continue being aggressive. And if his military leadership won't do that for him, then he has to take that over. Is it the right decision? I don't think so in the slightest, but, here we are. So I think that answers that question pretty soundly. I don't think he has any ability to really regain what he formerly had. I also don't think that, I think that he will probably live through the end of the war, but anything can happen. Here's another question. It seems to me that Ukraine has been doing its best to provoke Russia into taking Odessa. Even when it wasn't initially necessary, they've used their last access to the Black Sea to launch significant maritime drones and militarily insignificant targets such as Kerch Bridge, or initiating TikTok suicide missions on Crimea with a few small boats and so on. Why would they do that when they could have continued benefiting from Russia's generosity, utilizing the grain deal to export their grain and make money? Why are they provoking Russia? The Kerch Bridge strike came at the exact time when Russia was going to cancel the grain deal. The grain deal was not beneficial for Russia. It wasn't being followed by the West or Ukraine. It was used to export or import weapons into the country, and the Russians just were finished with it. They had enough. So they were going to cancel the grain deal anyway, and then Ukraine acted belligerently probably on the news of that. The TikTok missions are just all PR, and one way or another, I don't think Ukraine will ever have access to the Black Sea again. Will Russia take Odessa? Potentially. I've always said that Russia will take Odessa, but they will not take it by force. It will be in some sort of settlement, or Ukraine will collapse and they'll just sort of walk in. I don't think the Russians really want to fight for Odessa, and by the time they make it there, there's probably not going to be a fight. That's a very long way to go, and I don't see the Ukrainians being able to fight that long. Depending on if they get their financial aid in the coming weeks, we'll see. It's not looking particularly good right now. At least major delays, if not receiving the proper amount or any at all. We'll just see how that goes. That's really what everything is hinging on, is in what way this military aid comes in and how quick. Who knows? Both military and financial aid, because remember, the U.S. is paying salaries, pensions, everything for Ukraine, which is crazy that the American people are just okay with that. They don't know, but the fact that they don't know is concerning in and of itself. Other than that, I think I'm done for today. I hope this new map was interesting for you, for everybody to look at. It will be available in a couple of weeks, probably 2 or 3 weeks, once we start to get it really fine-tuned and cleaned up. And then once it's available, everybody can use it. You won't be able to change it, but you'll be able to go in and look at it, and you'll be able to screenshot and create your own maps around it and do whatever. So I appreciate everybody listening. If you care to follow me, you can always follow my Twitter at Squatson or Aiden. You can just type in Aiden. And then on Telegram, Kalibrated. And you can find that Telegram link both in the description below and in my Twitter bio. And if you really, really support my work and you want to see more videos, you can always support me on Patreon. That is the most beneficial for me, because that is direct financing for this work. that money goes to things like subscriptions to certain websites that I use for gathering information. It goes to paying for article subscriptions to news outlets and stuff like that. So if you guys support my work and you want to see more of it and want it to continuously improve, supporting me on Patreon is the best way to do that. Thank you so much for listening, and have a great day.